All right, all right, all right. Welcome, Mystical Misfits, to the official Tarot Mysticism release party. So excited you're here. So put in the chat where you're from. Let's see how many countries and places in the world are tuning in. And we'll get started with some fun. Hi, Susie. Hi, Sandra. Hi, Stephen, Alyssa. Ham Sandwich P. Richard. Mihai, Lucas, Victor. Kalida, Alyssa. All right. My dad's here from Hazlitt. Thanks so much for being here. Miss Venus, Matt, so good to see you again. Peculiar Endeavors, it's been so long. Peculiar Endeavors. We started working together years ago. You were part of the, very close to the OG of Tarot Mysticism Academy. Blue Skunk, London, cool. All right, so super excited you guys are here. I'm very excited. I never thought I would have a published book. That is wild to me. You know what? Let's warm up with some readings because where's my cards? Oh boy. You know, it's so funny. I used to, when I was years ago, I was doing readings like all the time. So I'd always have my cards with me at like a moment's notice. And now I almost never have my cards with me. It's like a totally different universe now. So what we'll do, we'll warm up with some readings. And then what do we have on the docket for today? We'll warm up with some readings. Then I'll talk a little bit about the book, how it came to be, what it is, and what you can expect. I might read a little bit from it. We can like talk about some stuff. For anyone that already has the book, if you have any questions on what you've read, we can chat about that. Then I'll probably do like a mini lecture class on the 3 planes, which is the model that I teach the tarot from, and kind of just the general model that so many mystical traditions follow in one way or another. And I'll talk a little bit about how the tarot can be utilized in these 3, well, really 2 of the 3 planes. And yeah, and then we'll do a giveaway today. So at some point we'll do a special giveaway for whoever's currently live, and then a giveaway of a free copy of the book. And then we'll close off with, well, who knows? We'll see what happens. You know, it's a long way to Malkut. So we'll see. Maybe we'll do some more readings at the end. So let's get started. We'll invoke Haru and jump in. I invoke thee, Iao, that thou sent Haru, the great angel, set upon the operations of the secret wisdom, to lay his visible hands upon these consecrated cards of art, that thereby we obtain knowledge of hidden things in your ineffable name. Amen. All right. Thanks so much, Sophia. Oh, nice, Govinda. That's cool. Yes, let's jiggy, Miss Venus. I love it. All right. So let's jump in. Who has a burning question? We'll do some divination. So I'll actually start with a little bit of a introduction to the lecture. So with the tarot and with a lot of the different traditions I teach, there's generally 3 planes. And there's a mechanical plane, which is at the bottom. There's a subtle or causal plane, which is in the middle on top of the mechanical plane. And then there is a mystical plane on top of the subtle plane. And you'll see these divisions in all traditions. It gets very fancy in books like the Qabalah, which is getting very popular these days. But you'll see all sorts of fancy iterations of these things. But you can really, if you're being really, if you're being really direct with the system, there's 3 planes that we operate on. And each plane has a little bit of a different worldview or paradigm associated with it. When we're reading tarot for divination, we are on the mechanical plane and sometimes popping into the subtle plane a little bit, depending on the reading and the context. The truth about all this stuff is that it's all one. There's not really a division of planes, right? It wasn't like, I mean, even the four worlds of the Qabalah are real to us, but are they real to God? Not really. And the first page or two of the Bahir kind of knocks that idea out of the park when it talks about darkness and infinitude and lots of deep things. So to ultimate truth, there's no division of planes, there's no levels, there's just pure being, which we went over Monday when I did the New Year's lecture on the Hermit card and being and Yod-He Vav-He Tetragrammaton, the name of God that is really nameless. So there's just being. But, we have fun with these minds of ours, with these overgrown prefrontal cortexes that we're all still getting used to as a species. And so we like to make things complicated. And in my book, I definitely make things complicated, but for fun, but ultimately it all resolves back into being, into simply being, unity, whatever you want to call it. Thank you so much, Zeus Angel Tarot. So, but when we're reading cards in a divinatory context, there's a couple things that happen. For one, we are we're pretending that there is a self that we're looking at separate from the one observing or doing a reading. So we're splitting ourselves that way. We're also splitting ourselves in time. We're thinking about, okay, I'm in the present moment, but there was a past and there will be a future. And so we're kind of folding time in on itself. Even space, we're thinking about what will happen where, what's happening over there, what's happening so-and-so. What's so-and-so saying about me? What does so-and-so feel about me? Asking about family. We're kind of trying to fold space and get information that way. So there's a lot of folding going on in the fabric of reality when we're doing divination. We're trying to, it's reminding me of Dune, like Dune, the space travelers, or whatever they're called, the space guild. They don't travel through space. They fold space to travel, to instantly go from one place to another. So in divination, we kind of like do that. We get really fancy trying to fold reality to give us information, to meet our needs and to get insights. And so by the end of a divination, we've crumpled up the paper of the cosmos into all these folds, into this origami of stuff. And it can get really messy and really fun, but beautiful and insightful. But that's why it's on the mechanical plane, because it's all about how things knock into different things. It's all about causality. It can be a little bit Newtonian in a sense. If you think about like Isaac Newton, the classical physicist, who was like the main guy until Einstein kind of reigned supreme, and now Einstein's kind of on his way out because of quantum physics and string theory. I'm trying to learn about physics right now. It's a good contrast to all the woo-woo stuff I do. But anyway, divination is a little bit Newtonian in that way. We concede to this idea that we're in this universe where things and people are bumping into each other to create things. And it's not true, but it is true in a context, in our day-to-day life, in the same way that Newtonian physics is used in all of engineering, right? Okay, so more on that tangent later. Let's get into some readings. I have a question from Matt for the group. Oh, what does the universe want us to know to achieve our highest, most abundant timeline? I love that question. What does the universe want us to know to achieve our highest and most abundant timeline? All right, let's see. We got the star card. All right, so the star card, you know what this is showing two things for me. On the one hand, it's showing me the relationship between the collective identity and the individual doesn't have to be totally synced up. So how we connect to our collective, whether that's the collective of the world or the collective of the 84 people here right now in this moment tuning in, or whether that's the handful of people you live with, whatever it is, the way you connect to the collective does not have to be absolutely in sync with who you are as an individual, because if it was, it wouldn't be the collective. So the star card here is it's connected to Aquarius. It's very much about individuality and being your unique self. However, with that, the star card also governs the 11th house in astrology, which is the house of friends, which is all about group association and group stuff. So what we're looking at here is the individual versus group dynamic. And in the Thoth Tarot deck, the star card represents Nuit, the goddess, Aleister Crowley's goddess of space from the Book of the Law. And this goddess is like the most love goddess like ever, the ultimate goddess, and not like relational, like lustful, personal love, like vast cosmic existential love. And so we look at this beautiful goddess of space, and what we see here is this deity that is space itself. And in the same way that space allows for whatever is within it to be within it, this goddess allows you to be everything that you are, and allows the collective to be everything that the collective is. So the message for the group from the star is don't go against yourself, and don't necessarily go against the collective for any reason unless like you have to, but be like space and accept and love what's showing up, like physically in your body, emotionally, interpersonally. Like be like space. Everyone write this down. Be like space and be in complete allowance of what's showing up to show up. That's the fastest way to heal too, and it's the fastest way to get stuff done. Just be in allowance of what's showing up to show up. You know, I say that, but you know, as an obsessed Capricorn, it's like I'm itching to like progress forward, and you know, I definitely have my days of frustration, banging my head against the wall and things that, you know, fitting and flowing. But ultimately, star card is saying be in allowance. And that means somatically in your body, when you're feeling something, when you're going through something, let the body feel the thing. You know, it's like what most people do is when they're like going through it is they just fight it with their minds, and they don't let their body do its work. So let your body do its work. The same thing with the mind. When the thoughts come up, be the space and allow the thoughts and allow those forms to be what they are. Same things with your relationships. So that's the big message for the group. That's a fun one. That's a fun one. Being space. You know, I first heard that years ago when I was at an energy school, and they were like, just be space. And for me, coming from a kinesiological background, because I used to have a dance company, that made a lot of sense. I was like, oh, being space, that feels nice. But I didn't know it wasn't just somatic and kinesthetic. It was like existential. It was like, no, literally, like you are nothing but the space that all this is happening in. It's very Vedantic. Power of Now. Yeah, great book. He talks about Eckhart Tolle talks about the same thing. He talks about the pain body, and yeah, he's very eloquent and direct with that. I have two questions. Okay, Lucas, I have two questions. Whatever you choose is fine. I have feel a bit disconnected lately from my spirituality. How may I reconnect? Do you want the true answer or the slightly less true answer? I'll give you the true answer, and then I'll give you a slightly less true answer. Okay. The true answer is it's impossible to connect from your spirituality because there's nothing but your spirituality. So there's a lot of spiritual things that we do that we label as spiritual, but you know, the asphalt is spiritual, you know, the gunk on the floor is spiritual. Like it's all part of it. So whatever we're going through, our hesitations, our nervousness, our anxieties, our neuroses are also spiritual because they're just forms flowing through the space of our being. And so it's the Empress, it's the diversity of experience. So it's all spiritual. But let me give you an answer that's a little bit more fun. 7 of Cups. Don't watch out for distractions and be careful of what you're putting your value into, because it may be exciting now, but it might not be exciting tomorrow. So this is like, this is a card of indulgence in things. And it could be drugs, it could be alcohol, but it could also be basket weaving, you know? For me, this was a month or two ago. I was binge watching the show The Expanse because I'm on a little bit of a sci-fi kick. It's like a hard sci-fi series that was a book, and I just indulged in that because it was, you know. But it's fine, you know. We have to give ourselves a break sometimes and indulge in things, but you know, it's all in balance. So be careful of what you're indulging in because it might not be serving you for much longer. But at the same time, enjoy life. Thank you so much, Sam. That's so sweet. Alyssa, energy for the day. Energy for the day. All right. Energy for the day is the Chariot card. So the energy is all about being in agreement with yourself. This is a message for me too. I have to go. I don't like traveling. And when I say I don't like traveling, it's not just like I don't like getting on a plane. And I hate getting on planes, but I don't even like getting in my car, you know, for like a 10-minute drive. Like I love being home. So this Chariot card is saying like accept your choice to travel, even if it's literally just several blocks away. But that's the mechanical read on that card is accept your need to travel or get someplace today or not get someplace today, and your plans for today. Be on time. But the deeper read behind that would be in agreement with yourself in the direction that you're going. So physically, like where you're physically going today and your appointments and your priorities, but also in generally let the day is just a microcosm of the year and your yearly goals. So let that microcosm serve the macrocosm. Let it reflect where you're going on a larger scale this year, what your goals are financially, professionally, in your relationships with your family, in your personal life, in your interests. Yeah, get very intimate with the path ahead. And if that makes you uncomfortable, then look at the path ahead and say, maybe it's not the path for me. Lady Knight of Avalon, how much can tarot assist in healing from trauma? Okay, this is such a good question, and I'm going to give you an answer that is not necessarily a popular answer, but this is the truth about tarot with trauma. So for a lot of trauma deals with people getting out of their own bodies as a defense. So whether somebody was hurt or abused as a child or another lifetime, or at whatever time in time or space somebody was hurt, at that moment, that person most likely, not everyone, but a lot of people tried to eject from the body so that they didn't have to feel the sensations or the thoughts or the feelings of whatever was going on. So what happens is, because of that eject, and there's many different disciplines that study this, psychology and kinesiology, and it's all, you know, all different things. But because of that force eject, it's almost like the eject is easier for future situations. So people that are traumatized tend to eject faster and with more ease than people without trauma, just because they've done it so forcefully in the past at some point. And it sort of becomes sometimes for them, not all, but sometimes for them, like a regular defense for things. So what the tarot does for people who eject often is it helps them explore something within themselves that they're having difficulty with through a medium that's not so direct. Specifically, the tarot. And within the tarot, symbols, concepts, stories, and all the things that tarot is connected to, numbers, typologies like astrology. So it helps people use their mind to explore a content that they would normally avoid. What this does is it provides a way to face things instead of facing it super directly. So for example, let's say somebody was I'll give another example. Let's say somebody's is a veteran. They went to war. Now when they hear fireworks, it triggers something. They want to get out of their body because it's triggering that horrible traumatic memory of the war. So one may like try to just, go to the fireworks and just get desensitized to it over time. That's one way. But through the tarot, one may look at the tower card. And the tower card is not the actual sound of the explosion, but the art, the symbolism, the meaning behind it is all of that. And so they may intellectually, visually, narratively, like explore that content through the tower in a way that's safer. And not only that, but then the tower will kind of become like this safe entry point into all these associations for them to explore not just their own trauma, but the collective trauma of war in the human race. So actually, what I just talked about is a really great example of the difference between the two levels that I talk about in my book. So in the first chapter somewhere, I introduced these 3 levels. Okay, on page 7, I introduced the mechanical plane, the subtle causal, and then the mystical plane. And so I'm going to use the example of the tower card that I just gave on trauma to talk about these 3 levels. So this is a great entry point into this. So the first thing I said was that the trauma, the trigger is fireworks. And what is the trauma? Explosions during war, right? All those atrocities. So on the mechanical plane, what the tarot can do is point to a very specific experience, which can be for some people predictive, whether that's looking into the past, looking into the future, looking to the present. So if I were to pull the tower card and it's in the past position and I'm reading for a veteran, then that may be the trauma they've experienced in the past from war, like the specific experience that they had directly. However, if I were to move on to the subtle causal plane, the tower is not so much the literal experience of war and battle, but it is the archetypal, symbolic pattern of that. So it represents more specifically conflict in the human race. And the way that the tower does that is obviously through its symbolism, but also through its correspondences. And this is where correspondences come into play. I talk about correspondences a lot in the book, especially Qabalah, but astrology as well. Those are kind of the 2 big corresponding systems that I use via the Golden Dawn system. So the tower is connected to Mars astrologically, and Mars is the planet of war, right? Mars is the god of war and related to all warring deities. Also governs adrenaline and all that fun stuff. So at this level, the tower is not so much pointing to the literal experience of war, but the adrenaline and all the nervous system things that are firing up in that trauma response, which is actually, from an experiential point of view, more real than the memory itself. So the thing with trauma is such a big thing because the body repeats the trauma and the experience of it in the present moment, regardless of what is happening around. So the tower points to the nervous system itself, the adrenaline, that panic or whatever. For me, it's like when I get on a plane, it's like, obviously it's safe, it's fine, everything's good, but my body's like, eh. So the subtle plane is more about the nervous system, or you might say in some ways the astral world or the energy body that is underlying what may have happened or what is currently happening to us physically. So that's the subtle world. The subtle world is most of tarot mysticism talks about the tarot in terms of the subtle world, using the elaborate associations connected to Qabalah and astrology to explore that. So it creates a map to explore all of our stuff. Now there's one more level, which is the mystical level, and that is where it's the beginning of the dissolution between subject and object. So let's use our example of the tower card. So we know that on the mechanical plane, the Tower card may represent a real experience of war. On the subtle plane, the Tower card can represent adrenaline, panic, and all the things the nervous system does in that trauma response. It's subtle because it's happening within, right? It's not obvious all the time, though there may be affect manifestations of that. But the mystical plane is where the relationship between the feeling of the trauma or the nervous system, the adrenaline, the panic, the war, all that stuff related to Mars, where and the Tower, where the feeling of all of that and the observer of the feeling begin to dissolve into each other. Let me put that in a different way. It's where the experience of the trauma, the experience of the nervous system, the experience of the many forms and manifestations of the Tower, feeling of panic, anxiety, fear, all that, where that starts to relax and dissolve into the observer of that feeling. And so when the two kind of come to, and there's different way in different mystical traditions, there's different ways to do this. So a Vedantic approach would be to say, okay, you're experiencing this trauma, recognize that it's a feeling or a thought or a sensation, and recognize that you are not that feeling or thought or sensation. That's one way. That's one direction you can go. Tantric approach is to say, recognize that you have this feeling, this sensation, this whatever, go deeply into it and feel, really, really feel it. But both ways they arrive at the same place. So mystical plane is harder to talk about because it's not as much for it's really where the mind starts to stop. Yeah, and those are our three planes. I think I got two birds with one stone with that question. I answered a question, and I did the main lecture I had planned for today. But we can talk more about it if you want. Geoff, this is so fun. So if you're boarding an aircraft, mechanical, then the Tower is not a good omen. So let's all fly on the causal or mystical plane. Exactly. And you know what? Your question is so funny, but there's a big truth to that. So when Joe gets on a plane and he recognizes that the nerves are just in the subtle plane in his energy body, it's easier to go from there to the subtle causal plane. So it's like, I'll use me as an example. If I wasn't as developed in this type of work, I might get on a plane and like freak out. I still do freak out a little bit, but I don't like really freak out. And because I might think, oh my God, the plane might crash. I feel claustrophobic. Oh my God, the plane is scary. But then I realize going up into the subtle causal plane, oh wait, the plane isn't scary. It's the feelings. It's the senses that I'm getting in my body, which has nothing to do with the plane and anything around me. It's just like a sense. And so I'll work on that plane. But if I go even up higher, and this is the kicker, this is the real fun thing. I recognize that because I am aware of this feeling, of this anxiety, of this sensation, I am simply not that sensation. So I can notice the form of it within the space of my being, going back to space. Going back to being space. I have a question. Myself used Thoth Tarot for many years. Just recently, I started to get numbers to count to and draw that specific card for me and others. Is that only my higher self ensuring me to trust? It could be. You wanna, whatever method you're using, I don't really understand the method, but I'm sure it sounds, if it's effective, keep going with it. If it's giving you a sense of certainty, you want to look for that. You want to look for a place of, yes, this feels right. You don't want to, if it feels clunky or if it feels off, then you want to adjust. But the thing about tarot methods is most of them are arbitrary. So it's not so much about what method you use. It's more about the building, using the method repetitively enough that it gets comfortable and programmed into your system, into your mind body system. So we do a lot of explorations of that with Tarot Mysticism Academy. People come into the academy and, I just throw so many different techniques at them and millions of ways to like read the cards and intellectually, symbolically, intuitively, and historically, and all different systems that can get very esoteric. And then, but it's not so much about the system as it is growing the system with you. So when people start the academy with me, the first thing in one of the first courses, what they do is they go through the cards, and there's this process where they journal specific questions that target the energies of the cards that already exist within them to start to build the foundation. Because the tarot is something you have to build within you. And so, all the esoteric philosophy in the world is not going to do you anything unless you've built it in within you as the microcosm. So in the academy, people start on that personal level, which is kind of like the mechanical plane, and they build up this system, this not even system, just this landscape of their own self and the cards. And then after they do that, then they move on to things like Tree of Life and Qabalah and all of that. And the varying methods throughout. You want to, again, same like how you pull the cards, you want to build that up within yourself. I love your way of explaining. Oh, I'm not seeing the whole page. I did my yoga teacher training, not teaching. It was more to learn philosophy behind it. And you are crystal clear. I want to buy the book, even if I'm a beginner. Oh, thanks so much, Christine. That means a lot. Congrats on doing your yoga teacher training. That's awesome. I've never done that. I would love to do it. If I had time, I would definitely do a yoga teacher training. But yeah, there's so much depth. I have a lot of friends that have done yoga teacher trainings. But yeah, that, yoga is, for me, probably one of the hardest paths, which is why I haven't gone down that path in terms of like the real like yoga sutras. It's really beautiful and challenging. But same with tarot. I mean, the yoga is, I was talking about repetition with tarot and how you have to integrate that. Yoga is all about repetition, doing the same techniques every day to quiet the body, quiet the mind over time. But yeah, it's really cool. It's interesting. A lot of the Eastern mystical traditions they have a lot of footnotes to yoga. Like a lot of times I feel like they'll talk about something and then they'll say, and what you can do about this is yoga. And like it all comes back to yoga. Not all of it, but a lot of times. John Solitude, would you recommend this book for someone like me who's relatively new to tarot? I know a bit about the history and concepts of tarot, but only on a basic level. So it's definitely an intermediate / advanced book, but I'll tell you why I would recommend it and why I wouldn't. So if you have a type of mind that likes to understand things in terms of maps and logic and like templates, like if you like a model for how things work, if you go to a class or a lecture and somebody explains something but explains it through this nice elaborate model where you can see everything and it's and how it has relationships to everything and why, if you like that kind of thing, definitely tarot mysticism is good because it will give you a lot of that. If you would rather have, and it goes through like there's in chapter 2, it goes through each of the majors. Like there's a good section on each of the cards. But if you're looking for a book that's on the card meanings and just like how to like card meanings and how to use them in divination, maybe not as much. What I'm saying for beginners is the way this would help a beginner or like an intermediate reader is it'll give you a lot of stuff to work with systematically. So for example, most tarot books will teach you like the meanings of the cards and say, okay, let's give an example. I don't know. Let's say 3 of discs means hard work and collaboration. You can memorize that three of discs means that, and that's valid. But for me, what's easier is to really connect with the energy of the number 3, the energy of the discs, and all of its other associations. So if I know that the energy of 3 has to do with form and development, and I know that the energy of the discs has to do with the earth element and manifestation, I know that this card is about the formation and development of something physical, which starts to precipitate the meaning of hard work, collaboration, and building something. So it's a little bit deep, and that's what I mean by the subtle causal plane. It goes into the subtle causal plane. You know, you're exploring the subtle causal plane when you're looking at things, when you're using correspondences in the tarot. Correspondences and associations are big with subtle causal plane because they're the glue that brings it all together. But there's other things in the book that are not really, well, they are tarot related because it's all related, but there are things that can exist independently from tarot in the book that kind of will create doors for you into other things, right? Like I talk about Plotinus, I talk about Advaita Vedanta, I talk about energy healing a little bit. La Morena, will there be an audio version by any means? You know, I had a couple of people ask that, and I am not sure. I'm not sure. Maybe one day. That would be really cool. You know what would be, you know, it would be so cool if maybe I could get my partner to do the audio because he has such a great voice. Like he has such a rich, just amazing voice, and he has many voices, like literally 100 different voices of he's like a recorder. He can hear a voice and then, you know, repeat it back, and he's very good at that. So Quiet Corner Tarot. Can you give an example of how the cards are presented in the book? Yes. So what card do you want? So I'll show you for example, if you in like the major arcana section, it goes, so you have the lust card, and luckily we got the Thoth images. Yay! Thank you, OTO. Yes, we got the Thoth images, and then it just goes through it like that, and then there's a few pages on that, and then the Hanged Man over here, and then it goes through the Hanged Man. But what's a fun card to doesn't matter which card. I'll read about one of my favorite cards, which is the Hanged Man. Because the Hanged Man is about mystical misfits, and if you're on this live, you're probably a mystical misfit. So this is the Hanged Man from Tarot Mysticism. The Hanged Man is the mystical misfit, the personification of a reversal of ordinary ways of thinking. Esoterically, this is a card of initiation, a surrendering of one reality for another. This is a stage in the spiritual quest and also a pattern expressed in the mythological formula of the dying god. This theme is shared by the preceding and following card. As previously mentioned, all cards suggest the same truth, the same source code through different angles, as the Tree of Life is a holographic design. Lust, the Hanged Man, and Death show this source code through one of its unique expressions, radical surrender. In the same way as nothingness surrenders itself to its own voidness to be everything, the Hanged Man surrenders himself to the Logos. The Hebrew letter attributed to the Hanged Man is Mem, water. This is our second of the 3 mother letters. This is the most passive of the mother letters in the way that the element of water passively fills its container. This is the metaphor of incarnation and is the secret of the Hanged Man. Life surrenders itself to incarnation by pouring itself into units and populating the earth. The life force illustrated in lust finds its embodiment in a Hanged Man in the way that water spreads itself out to reach the borders of its container. The essential idea is extreme allowance. That's relevant to our discussion today. Then it goes into some technicalities and more technicalities, and then generally the figure on the card, I'll show you the Hanged Man real quick here. So we probably know what the Hanged Man looks like. Generally, the figure on the card is a cross surmounted by a triangle. It represents 3 acting upon 4, comparable to the last 2 rows of the tetractys. This symbolizes consciousness as observer, observation observed, or subject-object action, acting upon the sensory world of the 4 elements. This is the Empress, card 3, the universal harmony of mutually arising diversity, acting upon the Emperor, card 4, the personal constitution of a separate self, as interceptor in the material world. And then it goes on to LVX, light, and some other esoteric things. But yeah, so it's kind of heavy, and then at the end of each card, it will go into divinatory meaning. So the Hangman says, how does this card and its energies show up in life? It is the act of surrender. It is a reversal of your normal ways of thinking, symbolized by the influence of Geburah on Hod. It is also about being different, being a traitor to the norm, so to speak. In a way, all that is mysticism, the act of surrendering to a will higher than I. It is certainly misfitism, surrendering to a point of view outside the status quo. In the Thoth deck, it is a card of enforced sacrifice, considering the less optimal context of the element of water in a deck based on an aeon of fire. In this way, it may be interpreted as loss, suffering, and failure. It is also a card of suspension, being in between 2 worlds, which has been expressed by the card's esoteric implications of our cosmic positions as appendages from spirit, reaching into matter. Yeah, so it's a deep one. For something, if you're looking for something more divinatory, like how do we read these damn cards, then you'll want to get into my Tarot Divination course or my Read with Confidence course, or my new one, Tarot Mysticism Methodology and Practice, or Thoth Deck for Divination course. So as you can see, like this book is looking at tarot through the view of the subtle causal plane, which is one step above the mechanical plane. But it's interesting because there's 2 things you can do. Well, there's 2 main directions you can go in the subtle causal plane. You can go up to the mystical plane or down to the mechanical plane. So one of the things we work on TMA, and this is where both the magic happens, but sometimes this is kind of the hardest thing to do. Maybe we'll do a little of this today. When you're working on tarot at this level, you can take the content of the subtle plane, which is ultimately your own imagination, your own mind, your own associations, and you can pour it downwards into the mechanical plane. And the way you do that is manifestation or divination. So in divination, what you're doing is you're letting all these associations soak and then kind of come up to the surface and manifest as specific divinatory messages. It's pretty fun because it's kind of where all the stuff that's floating around people, you can actually kind of start to work with it and see how it's playing out in their life, which makes tarot more therapeutic and more of a practice of self-analysis and inquiry. And it also can make your messages really accurate, the way that these different symbols can pop up in different manifestations. Now, the other direction is, if you were to go kind of deeper into it, go upwards, is to let all the symbols resolve into mystical union, samadhi or enlightenment, all of that. And that's its own thing. But that's not going to be that probably won't be as popular as the initial direction I talked about. But yeah. Let's see what we have. Thanks for elaborating on my question. Definitely one of my favorite channels for learning more about tarot. Oh, thanks so much, John. That means a lot. Omar said, last night I discovered that 8 is law card, justice versus, oh yeah. That is a whole nother lecture. But yes, I explained that in the book. The whole strength versus lust versus adjustment versus justice. Yeah, that's definitely explained in there. It's a fun one. Govinda, does your book go into shadow aspects of the isolated deacons on the astrological wheel? It doesn't go into every single deacon shadow aspect, but it does talk about the shadow deacons, which is a term that I borrowed lovingly from T. Susan Chang, who I footnote in the book, because there's an interesting thing with the shadow deacons as they relate to the tarot, and it creates a really rich dynamism in the court cards. Hey Mel, glad to tune in. I'm so glad you're here. I could listen to you talk tarot all day long. Oh, thanks so much, Mel. Mel, if you're the Mel I'm thinking of, you were another one of the close to original Tarot Mysticism Academy students years ago. Arthur, what does shadow mean? So the term shadow was, I believe it was coined by Carl Jung, the psychoanalyst who, and speaking of subtle causal world, the king of the subtle causal world is Carl Jung, probably. That's completely his domain. Absolutely. I mean, he definitely popped up into the mystical as well, but the subtle causes is like his expertise, definitely. So Carl Jung had these archetypes, and archetypes are complicated. They're like, you think they're one thing, but then you realize they're absolutely not that at all. But they're like these patterns embedded in the human condition, in this objective psychoid that we inherit from evolution or whatever, our past or our collective unconscious. And so the idea is that each person has in them the same archetypes as every other human being. We understand certain roles, and mythology is a great resource to explore these. And the shadow archetype is the aspects of ourselves we don't like, that we hate sometimes, and that we project onto other people. So the shadow is simply looking at what you don't like in other people and recognizing that all of that is you. And then accepting those things. And then in turn, by accepting what you don't like in others and yourself, you start accepting them in other people. It's a deep work. It's not a fun one, but it's a deep one. And so, but in the new age world has taken shadow and kind of made it not exactly that. It's and then in a lot of new age stuff, it's kind of just like, it just means the dark side of things or the shadowy side of things. But but real shadow work is challenging. It's very challenging. I find, for me, it's deep stuff. It's like accepting, parts of ourselves that we're deeply afraid of. And a lot of times people in the tarot world will look at the Thoth Tarot deck and look at it as a shadow work deck. I don't know why. Maybe because of it's kind of appears to be dark for some people. Maybe because of the association to Aleister Crowley. Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe just because it has that in it naturally, Yeah. Lucas, for someone with no knowledge of astrology, how difficult will it be to read the book? I doubt, if you don't have any knowledge of astrology, you'll be fine, because I mean, I'm not an astrologer. I'm not an expert in that field. So the way that I use astrology, though I think the way that I use astrology, I find to be very effective, and for my for what I'm doing. It's not super astrologically advanced. It's more of an archetypal psychological view of astrology, which is really how I view astrology. It's like the planets, the signs, the deacons. It's a map of ourselves. So I'm really not like an old school astrologer, like all the more traditional astrology that gets very technical and very deacon heavy, and there's a lot of contradicting systems. And it becomes almost more mathematical and scientific, perhaps, is not really my jam. So it's more about how the different planets and deacons and signs play out in the tarot and in ourselves. It's more of a holistic view of that. Yeah, tarot is good for shadow work. Definitely. The New Age rebrand of shadow aligns pretty closely with the advent of therapy speak. I would love to write an article about it. It's an interesting one. I mean, I always feel like the New Age world is kind of having this balance between this influx of psyche focused development, therapy focused development, personal growth, and the kind of superstitious stuff. But I think it's an interesting and really fun blend because of the way it kind of leads us into our journey, right? I mean, in a way, I look at it this way. It's like there's only one way to go, which is facing yourself in reality. And everything in life is going to help you inch your way there, right? So whether it's therapy, whether it's tarot, whether it's astrology, or just daily life, whether it's what's going on with your relationships and your family, and what's going on in your finances, what's going on in the world collectively, everything kind of inches us closer to facing ourselves. And yeah, so I find like things like a lot of the things in the New Age world can be a really awesome excuse or entry point or portal into facing ourselves in a new way, and thus facing reality. Conversely, it can be a pull away from reality, which is what I try to lovingly combat a little bit. Like sometimes some of the stuff can be a little bit like, and even like the stuff that I teach, it's very deep, right? Like I talk about like Qabalah and like the Hebrew letters and the tree of life and God names and all this stuff. But to me, it's all an expression of being. And that's why I keep going. Even on Monday, when we did the New Year's thing, I kept coming back to being, because it's like, if you're not grounded in the fact that all of this is you, then you're going to just get lost in the sauce. And people do, right? So there's that story of the 4 rabbis, right? And the 4 of them meet God, and one of them dies, one of them becomes a sinner, one of them goes insane, and only one of them survives. And the idea is like, to behold the face of God you're probably not going to survive with your sanity. Because our minds are just so, at least I know, I can only speak for my mind, I guess, but my mind gets so fixated and attracted to things and excited about things. And I want that for everybody in all of this work and their tarot and their growth. And there's so many fancy things to look at, but don't let it pull yourself away from you. Don't let it be an eject button to get out of your body. Like let it help you get in your body and in your world and in your stuff. This is a big thing. Maybe I'll make a whole video about this, because it's something I'm really passionate about. And I've been working with people for years in this community, and it's amazing to see people grow and develop but I can also see how some of this stuff can be not always helpful. I don't know. Okay. Joe, pat yourself on the back. Pat yourself on the back on accomplishing one out of the 3 main things we would do in this journey. Write a book, have a child, getting married, or own a home. That's beautiful. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah. Writing a book definitely, to me, seems like maybe the easier of those 3. Maybe not. Having a child is definitely probably the hardest one. That one I won't be doing anytime soon, or probably ever. No, I actually have I have hundreds of children, and I love them to death. They're my students. No, I'm just kidding. They're not students. They inspire me so much. But I feel like a little bit like that. Not always, but I feel a little bit like that for my students when they come in and I work with them and I see where they're at, and it's almost like I can see. It's the closest thing I've had to like I can see I could feel their potential. It's like sometimes around their bodies and above their head, I can feel this, like, how far they can go. And then they start to feel it, and then they start to go there. And it's like the coolest thing ever. So that's the closest I can get to that, I think. All right. Raphael has a great question. How do we overcome duality? Recognizing that we are all one, yet experiencing attacks from others. How does one make sense of this? Okay, this is a good one. So, how do we overcome duality? Recognizing that we are all one, yet experiencing attacks from others. How does one make sense of this? So, Raphael, I'm going to inch our way up into the mystical plane here. The attacks. I'd like you to interrogate the attack. Where are the attacks taking place? And this would be easier if we were like live together on video, but put in the chat, where do you really, when you drill into it, where do the attacks exist? They are from coworkers at work. Okay, so the experience, tell me about the actual experience of the attack. What is the evidence of the attack? I suppose mentally. Exactly. Okay. You're already there. Moving already on to the next step. So mentally, if the attacks are mentally, which mind is containing the attack? So if it's mentally, it must be somebody's mind. Is it your mind or is it somebody else's mind? Purposely adding more work to my schedule. So go into probably mind. There we go. Okay, so your mind. So it's a question about the content of your own mind. And so you have to, and here's the technique. And it may not be something I can teach in like a minute or two. This is something I teach over many classes and work at Tarot Mysticism Academy, but I'll try to give you the essence of the teaching to see where it can go for you. So you want to go deeply into that. So in your mind, you're experiencing an attack from coworkers, adding more work to your schedule. What is the actual form of that attack? And so you might go into your mind and you might say it's a thought, you might say it's a memory, you might say it's a feeling in my body. But you're already a good step ahead because you're recognizing that it's in your own mind, which is a huge step. On the mechanical plane, people don't go to that step. They say, oh, those assholes are giving me more work, right? That's the mechanical plane. Subtle causal plane is I am experiencing an attack within. What is that? I'm having a memory, a sensation, a thought, a pressure. So you go in to your mind and look at that form and tell me when you find it. The next step, and this is where the duality starts to resolve over time, is to notice the form. There are psychic attacks and obvious injustice to myself versus others. An ex who is my supervisor. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff there on the mechanical plane that you can work on. So, but working on the subtle causal plane is going into the form, going into the experience of what the attack is deeply, and just giving it space, giving it breath, giving it attention. That's the essential thing to do there. Now, if you were to go up even further, what you can do, and this can take a minute or it can take a million lifetimes. When you go further, it's the recognition that because you are having an experience, there's a form showing up, whether it's a thought, a feeling, emotion, a sensation, or whatever. Because it's showing up to you, it cannot be you. So you kind of have to look at it as a wave within the ocean of your own consciousness, of your own being. And what that does is it releases the attachment and the fixation around that, and the wave just starts to kind of move back into the ocean, and then you become unbothered. Totally. And Raphael, everything that ever bothers anyone in the world is bothering a part of them that's unhealed. Everything, right? And that part of us that's unhealed, and this is the beauty of this, when you are bothered by something, it allows you the opportunity to see where you're bothered by it and to resolve or work on that form. I like the word form a lot. And because what does the word form mean? Form means manifestation or something that has a beginning or ending in time or space. So if it has a beginning or ending in time or space, then it's something, it's a form, it's an experience. And that experience, that form, can have an existence in the material mechanical plane down below in terms of a coworker giving us extra work, or it can have an existence in the subtle causal plane, which is that feeling of being bothered by that, the feeling of, oh, there's injustice, subtle causal plane. But on the mystical plane, there's really no form. Because the essence of the form, and this is the big step, and this goes really into the non-duality, the essence of the form, the reality of the form is nothing but your own consciousness, is your own being. It's and what it is, it's not like this big explosion, like, oh my God, I see it now. It's rather the forms becomes more and more subtle and more subtle, and then you just recognize the true nature of all the forms, which is nothing but you, which is nothing but your being, nothing but I am, and nothing can touch you in I am. Right. So I really like going this far because I've worked, when I teach, and I, not just with my students at Tarot Mysticism Academy, but on the rare occasions when I, do like guest speaking or lecturing, like I have something coming up in February. I'm doing some guest lecturing at Convocation in Detroit, I think. And so when I always go to Anahata's Purpose every year to do a couple classes on these disciplines. But what I'm doing lately is I'm trying to see how far I can go and how quickly, because I might have like 30 people in a room, and they might, and just like everyone has their different traumas and their different things. But I find that the New Age world and a lot of spirituality, like of course, people come to New Age, tarot, spirituality, all the stuff because of there's something not right, there's something off, and so you can work your entire lifetime and doing the therapy and doing the healing and doing the shadow work and doing all the things to resolve all of that, which is great. And I support that 100%. Or you can just go right to the top, and in an instant, everything is resolved. I mean, is it resolved for good? It's more of a glimpse. You get one glimpse and you're like, oh, wow, I never had to worry about anything. How cool is that? And then you cultivate that glimpse over time. That's really the path of non-duality. That's the direct path. That's Advaita Vedanta is one of the oldest traditions of that. It's just that direct, going right to it. Yeah, it is. I don't know what date it is, but it is sometime in February. I'm really excited. Oh, this is a good. Okay, Zeus Angel Tarot. Great point you brought up. Jung says everything in is the self. Buddha says the self doesn't exist. Okay, this is such a good question. Swami Sarvapriyananda has a great lecture on this exact thing, and it's the pornum versus, I forget. There's fullness and emptiness. Shunyavada versus the pornum idea. So Shunyavada is the emptiness idea. There's no self. Whereas porn, I don't know, Purna is the English transliteration, is the fullness. So there's this idea that, like Jung will say everything exists in the self. Advaita Vedanta will say everything exists in the self. Buddhism will say there's no self. Well, why is that? Simply put, I'll explain it I'll try to explain it in a couple sentences. If the self has no form, then everything is in the self. If the self has form, then there's no self. So it depends on your definition of self. The Advaita Vedanta tradition, they define self as that which has no form, the Atman, because their whole thing is Atman is Brahman. That's the whole thing. The self is, and for my Kabbalists out there, if we're going into tarot mysticism, the Kabbalistic analog to the Advaita Vedantins' claim that Atman is Brahman would be that Tiferet is Keter. Okay, let me pull that for us real quick. Where is that tree of life? Here we go. So Advaita Vedanta says that the self is Brahman. Kabbalistically, this would be to say that the Tiferet right here is Keter, all the way up here. And in Keter, there's no form, really. But in Tiferet, there's the illusion of form, you might say. It's a big question. It's a really fun one. These traditions are on the surface radically different, but ultimately they're not different at all, though they may still claim to be different, and they are up to a certain point. The higher you go up, the more similar they are. That's usually the case. These questions are absolutely brilliant. Most of the time, I only see the same boring questions over and over again. LMAO. Yeah, it's because, well, a lot of that's it's the different planes, right? On the mechanical plane, there's so much to ask about that is so common and so commonly experienced day to day. And then on the subtle plane, there's slightly less questions because people are not looking there as much. And then on the mystical plane, there's even less questions because it's just not as common a thing. Is this Hebrew? Wow, thank you. Yeah, yes, it is. What time is it? Okay, let's see what we have. So what else do I have? So we do readings, how this book came to, you know what? I didn't go into how this book came to be. Unless anyone has any like content questions about the book, I'll talk a little bit about how this came to be and maybe do a few more readings. And we also have to do a winner. So I'm going to eventually do like a randomized selection kind of thing, and somebody's going to win a free copy of the book. And these three planes also, like what we've done now at Tarot Mysticism Academy is we've organized all the courses based on these three planes, which is really exciting because that way you kind of know what you're looking at and why and kind of the purpose of all of it. So we have like, and then in 2025, what I'm doing is we're developing, well, we did develop a curriculum for the level 1 plane. So people that want to do tarot divination specifically, like reading the cards, we have a whole curriculum now for that level 1 mechanical plane, growing your confidence, growing your intuition, reading for other people, working with all of those forms, all that good stuff. And now we kind of have a whole curriculum for the level 2, which is the subtle causal plane, which is the mystical philosophy, the Qabalah, your astrology, your energy healing, your embodiment and feelings and archetypes and exploring all of that. It's very heavy on the Thoth Tarot as well. And now we have a curriculum that's developing in the 3rd plane, the mystical plane, which is more about non-duality and how all of this resolves in non-duality, whether that's the Kabbalistic idea of crossing the abyss, or the Advaita Vedantin idea of self-inquiry, or the meditation techniques I teach to kind of explore that. It's really fun. Yeah. So now that I have established myself, how do I go about detaching from it? So this is a really, really juicy one, and I love this question. Okay, so if the self is something that you can detach to, then the truth is it doesn't have a reality if it's something you can detach to. If you're using the self as a word to point to that which you already are, then there's no need to detach. That's the real answer. However, coming into subtle causal, what we want to explore is that we do have a self and we want to develop that self. And this is why this 3 paradigm model is so important, because in the subtle causal world and in our normal experience, we do have a self, right? We have to eat, we have to pay our taxes, we have to maintain our relationships if we want them, right? We have to do the maintenance. There's that really fun scene in Rick and Morty where I forget, is it Rick or is it Morty? I think it's Rick, right? And he's like, he has this whole adventure as a pickle, and then at the end, he's sitting with the therapist, and she's like, what have you gotten yourself into? And then she kind of just delivers it to him. The therapist says, like, your problem, Rick, is that you just don't like the boring maintenance of life. And she's like, you know what? She essentially says something to the effect of like, everyone has to wipe their ass. People don't love to do it, but you got to do it. And you're not doing it. You're not doing the boring maintenance of life. And she totally reads him to filth. But that maintenance is the subtle causal plane, that normal, like keeping yourself, well, there's a mechanical plane, but the subtle causal plane is keeping yourself in a positive, productive energy for you and for those around you. So in that sense, there is a self, and we don't want to like push the self away and pretend that we don't have that experience. But at the top of the mountain, yeah, it's there. There's none of that. Pickle Rick, yeah, I think that was it. It's a great monologue. It's such a good one. I should add that monologue to the Tarot Mysticism Academy curriculum. It's so good. It's so good. You know what? Also, it's great for mystical misfits like us because we're, at least, I don't know, the people I attract, maybe not all people in these circles, but the people that I attract, we get so excited about certain things, and then we run to them, and then sometimes we forget to just maintain the norm, right? Taking care of ourselves, drinking enough water, like eating when we need to, like just the upkeep, the maintenance that we're not so excited about. But yeah. So I am more of a visual, and I read. The question would be, as we read your first book, are creating a format or links to go to or hear the explanation of the written part. I am so confused. I'm not sure what you're asking. I'm more of a visual and I read. I would be, as we read your first book, creating a format or links to go to hear the explanations of the written part. Oh, is there like in terms of like content on top of the book? I would say my YouTube channel does have some content that supports in the book, but I would say to the Academy, Tarot Mysticism Academy, if you're not a student yet, that's where you'd want to go to really get all of it, to kind of really pull all this in. So this is kind of a very intellectual and philosophical exploration of tarot at a deep level, specifically the Thoth Tarot. But really integrating it and experiencing it and getting more information around it. TMA is a great place to go, obviously, but also my YouTube channel has a lot of stuff too to kind of help and supplement this. But yeah. Yeah, I would say Tarot Mysticism, and this is kind of been my perpetual, not perpetual, I don't want to be dramatic, but a common adjustment that I have to make for myself is when I teach tarot and I teach these matters, I usually go really, really deep and really, really far very quickly. And then I have to kind of pull back and then let things sink in for a lot of students. And that's just a pattern of mine, just because of my excited ADHD brain. I just go crazy for it. And so what tends to happen is there has to be like an integration period. So what I'm realizing is with this book, it may be that as well. It may be a type of book where you read and it's like, whoa. And then you kind of just have to sit with it for a while, where you maybe just do a few pages a day, or like maybe just like a couple sections a day or whatever. Yeah, it's now that I think about it, perhaps it's not the easiest of reads. I don't know. Some of my friends who are so supportive in getting the book, I'm telling some of my friends, even my partner, I'm saying like, hey, listen, don't pressure yourself to get through the whole thing. If you do the first chapter, that's great. I really, that would mean a lot. But for tarot people, I think they'll handle it. Thanks so much for being here, Julie. It's so great to see you. You seem to be patient and understanding when you speak to others. How do you do it? For me, I just feel myself and other people usually. I think to a degree when I'm teaching, but like, it's interesting. I have my fair share of neuroses and judgments. But for some reason, when I'm teaching and I'm working with people, like whether it's live on YouTube or especially with my students at TMA, or when I'm meeting people one-on-one, it's like my heart opens up and I just feel like I'm talking to myself or my past self or something. So I do feel a lot of compassion. I would like for that compassion to be more consistent in my life, because it definitely, will ghost me occasionally, but yeah. I'm thinking at this point, I kind of speak Joe, so I should be able to to read in Joe. Yeah, I guess I like that. That's fun. How can I tell the difference between the ego and my higher self when doing a reading? Great question. Okay, let's see. There's a lot of ways. So it depends what you mean by higher self and ego. I'll answer it in one way, and then I'm going to answer it in a more accurate way. How do I tell the difference between my higher self and ego when doing a tarot reading? So if by higher self you mean the self that is a form, that has a substance, that has a quality, that you look at as like your best self or your future self, or the Greeks might say your holy daimon, or what Aleister Crowley might call the holy guardian angel. That is a self with a little bit of a personality. There's a distinction there. And that self usually, in most traditions, has your best interest in mind. In Aleister Crowley, that self is the aspect of you that has realized your true will. The aspect of you that has realized, in some ways, you might say, your true purpose, what you're meant to do, the directory that is so honestly you. Okay. So if you're talking about that self, then when you're reading the tarot, the way to differentiate the ego between that is that when the message comes, it should feel almost quiet. Like kind of like almost like a weight has been lifted off. But the quality of the message will likely be simple and quiet, and like it kind of just emerges. And there's a certitude about that. There shouldn't be an effort. If you're finding that your readings have an effort behind them, like you're interpreting a card, but it feels like this, like, ooh, there's an effort. It's almost like you're trying to make it a certain way. That's ego. So that's on one level. I'm going to now talk about another level. Do I want to go there? Okay, yeah, I'll go there. The real true answer is it's all ego. Because if you're reading for yourself, what's the self you're reading for? It's your ego. So the true answer with a lot, not just tarot reading, but a lot of the work we do is it's most of it is ego. So we kind of have to accept that. And in a way, when we're not in ego, it's almost like, I mean, we're still doing work, but in a way we're not doing work, we're just being, right? So think of like Bhagavad Gita is always talking about do what you got to do without expectation of any results. And when you do that, you're kind of in a flow. There's a surrender. There's no ego there. So it's almost like you're not doing anything. So I would argue that I would say, and I'm willing and open for debate on this, but I would argue that you can't give yourself a reading without ego. To be without ego is to be in in the mystical plane, and there's nothing to be read there, which is a place we're really exploring in Tarot Mysticism Academy now, is going at that level. And to many people, it might not be as fun because we like to read, and that's good, but it's the ego. Like, the ego likes the things. But ego is not a bad thing. The ego is that feeling of your own self as a distinct entity, whether it's the space between your ears or behind your eyes or wherever. Jennifer says, I've learned so much from you. My ADHD brain grasped and absorbed so much from your teachings. I love the Thoth deck. It was the first deck that I fell in love with. The art, symbolism, and completely. Yeah. I'm so glad, Jennifer. Thank you so much. That means a lot. Yeah, definitely more coming. Yeah, I think what we'll do is I want to talk about a little. I want to do an important shout out to some people that allowed this book to happen. And then what we'll do is we'll do the giveaway, and then we'll start to wrap up. Excuse me. So, first, a huge thank you to Ethany, who runs the Tarot Readers Academy. She was an inspiration of mine for years. I remember watching her on YouTube years ago, and I met her at the Tarot at the Reader's Studio that was run by the Amberstones, who are amazing and phenomenal and brilliant in their own right, truly brilliant minds. And so I met her there, and we had a meeting some time ago, and she recommended I write a book. And I had kind of been writing a book, but I didn't really want to write a book. But when the ideas came and I fixated, I was like, oh, I'm going to work on a book without any deep pressure or motivation to go out and get it published. But I spoke to Ethany, and she motivated me, and she said, now's the time to do it. And then I did it. And then I got connected with Llewellyn, and it was really great having Llewellyn because I had to do it because I signed a contract. So there was no other option. And for my ADHD brain, I was like, okay, I got a deadline. Let's finish this up. And I only had written like half the book by that point. So it was really fun. And working with Barbara, a huge thanks to Barbara, who was the acquisitions person at Llewellyn, who really helped this book become what it is, because y'all know my ADHD brain, how I just start in the deep end and then it's like, whoa. And she really helped me kind of take this book from here, but bring it down here so that I can go here, is the best way I can describe it. So, so she was super helpful in kind of just getting the content more organized and setting it up, especially in the introduction and the structure of everything. And yeah, originally it was just going to be the majors, and she had me do the minors too, which I'm so glad she did. And it was a really fun process, and they're all amazing there at Llewellyn. Can't say enough things. And the graphics and Laura for putting it all together, and it's just magic. It's so cool. And Marcus for helping me with the marketing and the publicist. And yeah, it was really great. So super grateful for that. Yeah, and then I have to talk about the actual mentors of my life. Porum King is my mentor and has helped me through so many things. And I can't even say enough about her, who's not just as like a teacher, but as a mentor, as a coach, as a friend. And yeah, and then my parents, huge. My mom and dad, my sister, my family has been super supportive. I can't thank them enough. That's probably the biggest thanks I have to give are my parents, who are like, it's so funny. It's like, for a lot of my life, I was like wondering, like, what am I going to do with my life? Like, all the things I wanted to do were like not like sustainable things, and then Tarot ended up being the big sustainable thing, and they've been so supportive throughout that process. I'm very lucky. I work with so many students that they just for so many people with religious trauma and family stuff, and it's just, I can't imagine what that's like, and we have a lot of students that the academy that are doing this really deep work and letting go of all this past conditioning from their family and old beliefs, and I mean, we're all doing that, right? As Christiana Gaudet says, every parent gives their child something to talk about in therapy. Love that line. But yeah. My parents have been super supportive, and they're awesome. Okay, let's do a giveaway. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to pull a card, and that number of the card that I pull is how much I'm going to count upwards into the chat. So, but I think I'm going to do a minor arcana card. So, and then I'll count upwards into the chat, and then whoever I land on is going to get a free copy. Oh boy, oh boy. Okay, the devil. So I have to count 15 starting now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay, I landed on someone, and if they're still here, you're going to get a free copy. I landed on Omar. So Omar, are you still here? You were the 15th person above in the chat when I started counting. Omar, it looks like you are still here. Oh, yay, Omar. Okay. Yeah, you win. Cool. Okay. So, Omar, what I'm going to ask you to do is if you're comfortable with it, you can put your email address in the chat, or if you'd rather do it like privately, what you can do is go to tarotmysticismacademy.com, and there should be a chat bubble there, but there isn't one. Here, I'm just going to give you my email address. Email me at joe@tarotmysticismacademy.com. tarotmysticismacademy.com. Either email me there or message me on tarotmysticismacademy.com, and we'll connect. I'll get your information, and we'll have Llewellyn send you a free copy. Congrats, Omar. But don't forget to email me. Hey, Sophia, it's so good to see you. Sophia was one of the original OG students at Tarot Mysticism Academy in the caveman days, back when we had much less stuff, but it was a good time. It was a good time. It was so fun. Sophia is super smart and doing lots of cool things with tarot. If we got a tarot deck and an oracle deck, is there anything else we need? For this book, you don't even need a tarot deck, really. I mean, I would recommend having a Thoth Tarot, but I mean, if you're reading this more for the contemplative side of it, you don't need a deck. It's just, the images of the cards are in there. Thank you, OTO. I'm so excited we got the Thoth images. It was like one of the best days of the year for me, getting that news, because it just, it's so great just to having the Thoth cards in this book. That's so awesome. Oh my God, I love it. I'll do one more collective read for the close, and that. Did our orders Monday get you ranked? I was a little late to party. Oh, thanks so much, Kathleen. So the good news is, I'll give you some background information on this in the ranking. So as you all know, I'm a Capricorn. I got a Capricorn stellium. So as the mountain goat, I'm always like, let's get to the top of the mountain. Let's see how far we can go. I'm very ambitious. So one of my goals when I decided to write a book, after speaking with Ethany, and then obviously when the book was all signed and ready to go with Llewellyn, and I had no choice, I was like, okay, let's write this book. I was really excited. It was one of the best days of my life getting that news of like, oh my God, like they're gonna produce the book. That's so awesome. So in that same moment when I realized this is really gonna happen, as a Capricorn, I'm thinking, okay, well, what else? Let's be a bestseller. Let's do it, right? The little devil on my shoulder, not the devil, but the devil card is also about ambition. So I'm like, let's see how far we can go. So on my vision board, I put like best-selling author. So I didn't really know how to do it, and I did some research, and but I was like, you know what? And I talked to Marcus a little bit about it, but I was like, okay, let's try to like really promote the book in a short period of time to see how high we can get on Amazon lists. because when I first revealed like the book, it shot up to like 26 on the occultism bestseller list on Amazon, which was like cool. But I was like, no, come on, let's get the top 10. So then this week I asked everybody to buy it on the 6th, and we landed on number 2 on mysticism on Amazon's mysticism bestseller list, which to me is so awesome, because the mysticism portion is really, to me, what this book is about. I mean, the tarot is obviously there as well, but the mysticism to me is my favorite part of this. So yeah, we landed at number 2 on mysticism. We landed at number 10 on tarot, and we landed at number, I think, 5 or 6 on occult. And yeah, so it was really cool. It was really, really exciting, and I got my screenshot and all of that. So it in some ways it doesn't really mean much, but in other ways it really does, because it's just it's just a good feeling. It's a subtle plane feeling. Mysticism, there's none of this matters, right? But on a subtle plane, it's really exciting. So a huge thank you to everyone, and that's who I have to thank the most. A huge thank you to everyone for getting the book and being so supportive. When I sent that email out, I got so many responses of people telling me that they already ordered it, that they're gonna like order it on the day. And on Facebook, I'm having a lot of like people in the tarot community like reposting things and commenting. I'm like, oh my God, this is so nice. This is so amazing. I'm not because of, Tarot Mysticism Academy is like where I spend like almost every waking moment of my life is like going towards that. I don't do a whole lot of stuff with the tarot community at large, just like the global community. So it was so touching to just see so many people being supportive, and colleagues in the field that I've read with or met at conventions, and it was just amazing. It was so awesome, and it means a lot. And oh my God, the like having my tarot heroes write the blurbs, the blurb from Benabel Wen and Ethany and Stephen Bright, and yeah, it was just amazing. So it was really wonderful. I'm really, really happy. Thank you all so much for the support on all of that. Ooh, coupon code. Oh, like I don't know how to do that. If I could, I absolutely would put a coupon code for it. I didn't though. I have to ask Llewellyn to see how that's done. But that's a good idea. Let me just check. I want to make sure I have your email. Omar. Okay. Oh, Omar, you have my email, right? You screenshotted my email. I want to just make sure that you have it before we wrap up, so we can get you the book. Okay, so let's do one more reading. It's 1234, which is the numbers I keep seeing all the time. And then we'll wrap up for today. But yeah, Tarot Mysticism, available everywhere books are sold. Amazon, Books A Million, Barnes & Noble, Llewellyn, directly. And yeah, and I'm so excited. Thank you all so much. And then let's pull our card. We got the Ace of Discs. So Ace of Discs is grounding, starting something new related to your body, being able to receive gifts, being able to receive stuff, give gifts and give stuff. It's about taking action, bringing it down to Malkuth, really taking whatever's up in here, all your ideas, your passions, your curiosities, your wonders, and taking the action to actually manifest this thing. Like really doing the thing, and because we live in the world of Asaya, which you'll learn about in Tarot Mysticism Academy, is the world of action. But if you don't take the action, the thing doesn't happen. So my mentor tells me this story sometimes. I think it's a Buddhist story, but I'll give it the way that she teaches it to me. So she talks about how, there's a story of this guy who's he's walking down, I don't know, he's walking, and everything he imagines comes true. Everything he imagines. The moment he thinks of something, it's a reality. So he notices he can do this. So what he does is he starts imagining all the best food he could possibly eat. And so there's all this super crazy, delicious food and gourmet things and expert chef created dishes and the best fruits, the juiciest, sweetest fruits, and the most tender, beautiful meats, and all the things you could imagine food-wise. And then he enjoys all the food. And then he starts thinking, about sex, and he thinks about the most beautiful men and women. Let's make it clear, right? He thinks about all the most beautiful men and women he can have sex with, and he has this whole orgy, and enjoys all of that. And then he starts thinking about the coolest experiences he can have, and then he's flying all over the place. But then he starts thinking, I hope I don't think of something negative. And then the energy changes. And all of a sudden, there's this different atmosphere. There's this tense atmosphere. And as he's flying around, he loses his wings and he crashes down, and he's like, uh-oh, what's happening here? I hope I don't think of something negative, because that would suck. It would happen. And then, of course, he starts thinking about snakes, because snakes are his biggest fear. And then he starts seeing snakes. And he's like, oh my God, that's horrible. And then the snakes multiply, and they're coming around and they're strangling him and all of that. And then he's thinking, oh my God, this is torturous. And then he starts getting tortured. And the worst possible torture you can imagine. He's like, oh my God, this is horrible. I'm going to die. And then he dies. So what's the moral of this story? The moral of this story, as my teacher has told me, is that we live in a world where there is a delay between our intentions and our experience. And that delay is very important, because in that delay, we learn how to be a creator and how to create what we really want. So if we didn't have that delay, we would be like that man and eventually get tortured and die, because we don't have control over our minds yet. But because of that delay, we have that time to adjust ourselves, and that time to really kind of, when we slip into those dark places, to come back, to center ourselves, and to redirect our intention and energy and point of view to something that we actually want. And in Qabalah, this is the world of Asaya. This is the world of action. And in here, that the Ace of Discs is Keter in Asaya, the crown, the Godhead within the world of action, the manifest world. So this is saying, the action is required to get what you want, so that it can test you to make sure you really want it. And I can tell you, from running a business for years and doing all that I've done, people will tell you they want something so often, and it's not true. The amount of times we tell ourselves, oh, I want this, and then take no action, it's always a lie. If there's something you want and you're not taking an action to it, you have to recognize that you just don't want it that bad. Because if you wanted it that bad, you would get up and you would move. And the idea here is, if our true desires, our true desires at the core of our being, we don't have to worry about them, because we're already inching our way towards them. We can't help it. It's already there. So big message here is with the Ace of Discs, take an action on what you really want. If it's what you really want, stop pretending that you want things and not other things, and recognize wherever you're putting your time, money, and energy, that's what you really want. Own what you really want. Go for it. It'll be so fun. Okay. So, so yeah. So thank you all so much for being here. This was so fun. Congratulations, Omar, on the book, on the free book giveaway. I think I'm going to do more lives this year, because today was so fun and Monday was so fun. But I do have a lot of stuff I'm working on for Tarot Mysticism Academy and other things. But yeah, so Tarot Mysticism Academy, if you haven't ordered it yet, it's available everywhere. You know, the Amazon, the Books A Million, the Barnes & Noble, the Llewellyn, all that stuff. News for the future. We're doing a 3 kind of part curriculum now for Tarot Mysticism Academy on the 3 planes that I discussed today. So if you want to go deeper into divination, we have a curriculum for that on the mechanical plane. If you want to go into more the subtle causal realm and study more of this mystical philosophy, we have a curriculum on that. And then if you want to go straight to the mystical plane, we have work we're doing on that. And then I'm also doing a mastermind where I work with spiritual businesses to help them grow and get to bring out my Capricorn stellium, which is so fun. And yeah, it's so fun. So if you ever thought like, I really want to be a tarot reader, I want to do this for a living, I want to get out into the world and help people, do something meaningful, quit my 9 to 5, well, I've done it, so I can teach you exactly how to do it. And there's a lot to teach, because running your own business, doing this work, whether it's a tarot reader, healer, coach, whatever. I've been a coach, now a teacher. It's a lot, but my hyperfixating brain has figured out so many different trades in the past like years building Tarot Mysticism Academy. So now I'm helping other people do that. It's so fun. Oh my God. And when one of our last meetings, mastermind meetings, we had some amazing readers who were already getting paid and without even really promoting themselves, just in being part of the academy and just their energy and the work that they've been doing and their mindset, people have been just paying them just because, without even like doing all the marketing stuff, which is so cool. And, I teach a lot of marketing stuff as well, but yeah, so I really want to start working with people that want to make a bigger impact on the world and other people to kind of carry this wisdom across and start their own courses, have their own clients, have their own programs, have their own things, because that's how this stuff kind of travels and gets around. And I don't know, I think, business, there's just something it's just creativity on another level, having run Tarot Mysticism Academy now for some time, it's like the biggest impact I've had on people is the academy, is like building this thing. And now I'm building an amazing team and they're so lovely. And Ryan, Melissa, and Luigi, and they're just wonderful. And it's like, I'm seeing just the impact being bigger and bigger as it kind of fractalizes from me and our team and the students to their students and their clients and et cetera. So yeah, it's great. Awesome. Thank you all so much for being here. I'm going to be live at Convocation in February. And yeah, stay tuned. If you have any questions or content requests, you can always email me. And for all my students, I look so forward to seeing you very soon. We have a seminar coming up. We have a mastermind meeting coming up and our trainings. And yeah, much love. See you in the next wormhole.